He is Associate Professor in European Studies at the University of Hong Kong. He joins us from Hong Kong today. Stefan, thanks for your analysis. Willem was just explaining how this has been somewhat of a setback for Boris Johnson's do-or-die Brexit strategy. Up until now, he really has pledged to take the UK out of the EU on October 31st, deal or no deal. Now that we've seen this UK Supreme Court ruling, does it effectively put a no-deal scenario for his government to bed? Is that what it means?
It is undoubtedly a massive setback for Boris Johnson, but I wouldn't say it's the end of a no-deal scenario. It is true to say that Boris Johnson is even in a weaker position to negotiate a deal with the EU, and I don't see how the Parliament itself can be in a position to negotiate. But as for the no-deal scenario, the Parliament can enforce the request for an extension, and the extension is likely to be granted, particularly if new elections are planned. But the Parliament cannot rule out no deal. The Parliament can only effectively rule out a no deal if it agrees to a deal. But there is no majority in the Parliament for a deal that the EU is likely to offer. So I think the outcome is the extension, yes, very highly likely, but the scenario of no deal is a very distinct, remains a very distinct possibility, just delayed.
Okay. So Boris Johnson is also running out of political time as well. He's set himself this deadline for the end of October. That effectively means he has 4 weeks. What are the prospects for negotiation?
Well, as I just said, the negotiations that he is continuing with the EU are unlikely to succeed because he's not taken seriously by his EU counterparts, and he's going to be even under more pressure domestically. So he's not likely to get a deal, but there is no alternative in place. So will there be a vote of no confidence? If yes, and an alternative caretaker government is put in place that would request an extension, then we have a guaranteed extension if the EU accepts that, which it is likely to do. But even that scenario is not likely to happen. So I think what the UK needs is general elections to break through the impasse. But where and when that is to happen, we are yet to see.
Well, you're not going to like my next question then, Stefan, because I was just going to ask you when and where is that going to take place? Because we know that Boris Johnson has already tried to get an election. The Parliament said no. We know that Jeremy Corbyn wants an election, but he doesn't want an election until after the Brexit deadline has been extended until January. There's been some reporting around in the last 24 hours or so that potentially there could be a general election held on October the 31st. Whoever came up with that idea, perhaps we might need to speak to them, given that that is, of course, the Brexit date if we don't see an extension. So how does a general election occur from here?
Well, this is the massive complicating factor, and we honestly have no answer to that. But the strategy that Boris Johnson has, if there is one, might still work out for him in that if the general elections was to occur before October the 31st, however unlikely that is, then there will be no one in position to prevent a no-deal Brexit. So that's why Labour is reluctant to call a no-confidence vote. So there is a lot of gesturing around. They are calling for Boris Johnson to resign, but will they force him to resign? We'll be smarter in a few hours. The Parliament is in charge, very much so. That is what the court decided. The Parliament is sovereign, but the Parliament has no capability, no ability to negotiate an international treaty. So this is the main problem. What we need is a powerful executive. The current government is certainly not a powerful executive because it doesn't have the majority support in the Parliament. That's why we need new elections.